Our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by our friends at Zapper, the world's leading augmented reality platform and creative studio, with over 11 years of experience working with the world's biggest brands through Zapper Creative Studio. Zapper also has an award-winning web AR platform, ZapWorks, that lets you create your own mobile AR magic. Finally, check out their Zap Box, the most affordable mixed reality headset on the planet. Start creating AR over at zap.works or talk to them about your next AR project at zapper.com. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Chilowitz and Roni Abovitz for This Week in XR. It is March 17th, 2023, and Ted and I are slowly recovering from South by Southwest. And we were just giving Roni some more FOMO for not coming and speaking and, hanging out and enjoying the glorious serendipity that is South by Southwest.
Yeah, the gang was pretty much all there except for you, Roni. It was a kind of a reunion year. I gave a few different talks. Charlie was judging XR. It was a whole to-do. It was good. We had a good time. And I'm still recovering from my cedar allergy, which it sounds like I have a cold, but I don't actually. I have a severe allergy to cedar, which blooms in the spring in Austin. And it causes everyone to think I have a cold. And I have to say, I don't have a cold. I'm not contagious. I'm just allergic to cedar. And we don't have that in California.
Biggest question, did Charlie get to see the bats?
Oh, did you get to see the bats, Charlie?
I walked by the bridge. I guess it wasn't the right time. It was about 6:30 and it wasn't
too late. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was looking for them. It was dusk, right? It felt like it was sunset, but I did not see them. So, and then I wasn't ever over there around the right time to take another look.
Next year,
the bats with you, Roni.
Maybe I will take you to see the bats.
Exactly. This week our guests are the winners of the XR exhibition, Karen Palmer. She was the producer and director of Consensus Gentium, which is a movie that you watch on your smartphone. I don't know, it's 20 or 30 minutes, but it's really quite extraordinary because you start to think the messages coming in that are part of the movie are for you. And so it's sort of not really an XR experience. Won first prize. Second prize went to a real VR experience, which was straight up sort of looking into a mirror. And if you are a man, you look nice. Picture of the bats Roni just threw up behind him.
Keep going.
So Body Mind by Cameron Kostopoulos, who was one of my students actually at ASU graduate school, showed that. And then I got Roman Rappak from Miro Shot to come and chat with us right after he lands in Europe. His band has started a company called Wristband, which lets them give concerts that are simultaneously in AR and VR, and that the people sitting in the audience experience in mixed reality. Like all of the VR that I saw at the show, its largest limitation in ever being seen widely is the terrible throughput that VR has in public places. So, and that's the problem with the festival, right? People line up at, 11 o'clock, they run in there, they want to sign up for VR things. But the truth is that most of those are only some of them are 10, 20 minutes long. They're only going to accommodate 8 or 12 people an hour. They're open for 6 hours. So, there's, I don't know how many people at South by Southwest, 60,000 at least for the conference that we were at. So,
yeah, to your point,
Charlie,
to your point, the two folks we're going to have on the podcast today, I didn't get to see either of their works at Sundance. I saw about 6 other things. I saw this remarkable piece from a woman named Victoria, who I've known for a long time, that did a almost hour-long VR piece that basically chronicles and creates narrative around the Cambodian tragedy, where a lot of parents lost their children.
I watched that.
Extremely emotional and powerful. But because I spent an hour in that, I wasn't able to see the other 2 things that ultimately won the festival. So
you'd have to do what I did, Ted, which is spend all of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday building your day around seeing VR experiences.
Very difficult to do.
It actually kind of ruined my first seeing 25 of the 30 experiences in the XR Expo. Minimized the rest of my South by Southwest. So I wasn't kind of free to roam and be exposed to new things, which is the best thing about South by.
Yeah, well, while you were doing that, I was either in a green room prepping for a talk or giving a talk or
But
listening
wait,
to other people's talks. So it was interesting.
here's the best thing that happened, and it's always not the thing you planned for or expected. I met Paul Bertrand, the co-founder of Felix and Paul.
Yeah,
He
Paul,
showed me
yeah.
an experience that they had made primarily for the original Magic Leap, but they went ahead and finished the project, and they don't want me to say a lot about it, so let me just say it's an AR enabled book that goes far, far beyond
Yeah, I've seen pieces
anything
and
I
parts of it.
did in my first book. So
Charlie, they moved it to the ML2, right? To the Magic Leap 2.
yeah, yes, and they're looking at other platforms as well, and I think it has a lot of broad appeal. It would work in VR, but this is I mean the best studio in XR. I mean, they just do the best work, the 360 work, and you know, I'm not generally a huge fan of 360, but theirs is really good.
And Charlie, that project, I remember the Felix and Paul team, and I think it was Lisa Henson from the Henson company.
Yes.
They were in my office pitching this, and it
Neil
was
Gaiman
like,
wrote it.
yeah, it was like, this has to happen, you know, because it was kind of like the never-ending story. I'm like, yes, please. Yeah. And then we had the intervention of the pandemic, but thank God, like this blade of grass passed through the cement.
Yeah,
really good use of
yeah.
this.
So let's move on, because they really were sensitive about me
Yeah, we
talking about it or writing about it.
We love you guys, though. We love you.
Yeah. You know, we can keep going on South by Southwest. Let me throw out a few news stories and see what resonates here. First of all, Meta is laying off more people, and they're talking a lot more about AI than they did about the metaverse a few months ago. So lots of new Meta schadenfreude in the column. You know, they say, by the way, a word from Meta Reality Labs is that the product roadmap for XR is not changing. Good to reiterate that Quest 3 later this year, a low-cost Quest in 2024, and I think an upgraded Ray-Ban Stories. But the real news here is see-through AR glasses in 2025. So that's actually pretty soon. But
this is to my continued thesis, Charlie and Roni, of now I've shrunk it down into a much more digestible. If you're trying to innovate, start small, grow small, be big when you're ready. Don't try and buy the market. Don't try and artificially create the market, because you will likely tumble and fall. And this is what I'm seeing over and over again from these very well-capped companies. It's a deep frustration for me that they just
let me give you a counter, though. Let me give you a counter, Ted.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about our favorite fruit company, which you obviously can't talk about. There's no way they could start small. There's no way they can't not invest tens of billions to ship whatever the first thing they do, because if it isn't at the quality level of like all their other stuff. So I mean, the problem is they're trapped by their own success, so they have to make that giant investment. And I don't know how you start small like that. Here's the
counter to that counter.
Okay.
You are correct, but the reason why Apple shrouds everything in so much secrecy, and then the leak factory is the only way to get information, is because at their essence, they actually do start small. They start with a small core group of people with fairly limited resources to build into something. And as they start to see that this is going to become something, they still keep it secret. So they don't spend any money in the marketing machine, any money in the consumer release machine, any of the, we've got to be big and important. They just squirrel away, working
internally, right?
Internally. And that may, by the way, by order of magnitude, not be small, but they remove a lot of the spend dynamics by not going public and trying to buy the market. They create something that is really compelling, and when they feel it's right, they'll release it. And there's been a little, scuttlebutt about Tim Cook apparently sort of forcing the hand of the engineers, and it's a really good.
Yes, that was news that was breaking this week. I was going to bring this up.
Yeah.
And I included a lot of the press in the column that had come out this week about supposedly Cook overruling some people on his team in engineering who thought the product wasn't ready, and that he's pushing the release in June at their annual conference. So
yeah, so we'll see.
We'll see it. That's never a good look. Engineering thinks it won't work. Not a good one.
I'm listening with all that story through a very refined lens of trying to see what that really means.
That story has a
perspective.
truthiness factor of maybe you never know, right? It could be
You'll never know.
It's
You just never know.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much coverage of this story from so many big outlets. I don't know. This wasn't like a bunch of us grubby internet bloggers, scrumming up and copying each other.
Yeah.
This was like real original journalism.
Real deal. Yeah.
So also the hit parade, there's a company, I don't know if you guys heard of Adept AI?
Yes.
Not since you wrote about it, Charlie. This was
This is the $350 million on top of 65 raised in the middle of last year.
Yeah.
And they're doing the enterprise AI. That's what we know about the company.
Here's the reality. I think people might be surprised about the numbers, but look, OpenAI needed over $1 billion, probably close to 2 billion to get to critical mass to do anything significant. So I think the coin of the realm in being an actual player in AI is probably close to $1 billion and above. So the 300 million is just like a stepping stone. Otherwise, you're building on top of somebody and you're beholden to the landowner. So it's kind of like, a lot of people will build their business on top of someone else, like on top of OpenAI, Microsoft, or on top of Google. Yeah. But that's very shaky, because at any moment the terms change and suddenly your business is gone. So if you want to actually be a player, the coin of the realm to get in is probably in the $1 billion plus range.
To build your own with a different gating engine and a different use case and a different,
or at least more control over the land, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I hate to be that guy that sort of scratches his head and goes, I just don't get it. But I don't get.
I'll be that guy instead, Ted.
Please, because it's is there a professional enterprise version of Google search that I missed somewhere along the line? Isn't it just ubiquitous and that's what makes it so powerful? Isn't that why Bing is kind of Bing is bang? It's there we go, here we go, baby, everybody's got it now, right? I get, and obviously I see enterprise layers that will use the power of scale, but I guess I don't see a real logic, certainly not investor logic at that kind of capital, to try and compete against that. Everybody has access to the tool and build things on it. But maybe I'm missing something. Clearly I am, because investors see something I don't,
Ted, I think the biggest thing is a lot of businesses and sectors have data they're not sharing. That's not scrapable. And maybe that dark matter of data, which is not in any search engine, that nobody wants to share, that could be trade secret. There's no thing for that. So it could be that's an interesting area.
So it's like the Rand Corporation type of thing, where there's all these data silos that they keep and protect for all these, government agencies and people that have to be shrouded in secrecy. And I guess
General Motors puts all of its prints online for OpenAI to scrape, right?
Right,
so,
exactly.
There's stuff like that.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, that makes sense.
So final news story, Tilia. Brad Oberwager was on the show. Tilia is the payment system that spun out of Second Life and partnered up with JP Morgan. They just brought in 22 million, and Brad has officially signed on as CEO, which probably means that they'll be looking for a new CEO to run Second Life, because he's been running it in the meantime since he bought it from the VCs who originally backed it and really wondered why they didn't sell it for $1 billion in 2007.
At their moment, right? Yeah.
But Tilia is the real deal, and they're partnering with JP Morgan. And as you know, I was always very skeptical that the metaverse was going to run on cryptocurrency, because credit cards work so well. The problem is transaction size, and Tilia solves that. So I think they're in a very good spot. I don't know who's competing with them. It seems like they could be the Ready Player Me of virtual currencies.
Yeah, I mean, crypto microtransaction is an interesting thing, and I actually think it's sneaking the overall crypto markets back up between the bank failures of the last. We talked about this a lot in Austin. The bank failures of the last couple of weeks. There's this kind of confidence pendulum swing, right, where there's a swing away from all things crypto because of the instability and the lack of sort of actual user value. And then when traditional banks get shaky, people swing their money and their interest back into the more sort of exotic. And now there's another wave of like sort of crypto excitement, which is interesting. Humans are very, very predictable when it turns out to be, you know?
All right, Director Karen Palmer's in the green room. Let's bring her in. Welcome to This Week in XR. Great to virtually see you again.
Awesome. Lovely to see you too.
We were talking about the film at the top of the show. And I said, there were times when I was watching it and messages were showing up that I thought they were mine.
That's the idea. It was about creating this seamless blend with reality and fiction through a device using something we're so connected to, which is absolutely imperative to our daily life. Yeah. And that understanding of that vocabulary and that language is just so natural and intuitive to us.
Yes.
And tapping into that connection.
Yes, turning that into a storytelling language is a stroke of genius.
Well, and Roni and I can only listen in silence because we both have FOMO because neither of us have seen it. Only Charlie of our group has seen the experience.
But wait, here's the thing.
Oh, good. Give us some insight.
This film could be distributed on every smartphone in the world.
So when is that happening? When do we get to see it?
This could start a whole new genre of app-based storytelling on smartphones. And you could literally have an app, maybe a little AI communicating with you or telling a story in your message feed or another interface that would start to take place throughout the day and have context.
I'd be willing to bet
you. That's crazy.
I'd be willing to bet 100% of our listeners have smartphones. So the question is, when do they get to check it out? And when do they get to check it out?
That's a great question. So what I delivered at South by Southwest was a very high level prototype. So it was really part of our R&D development. It was never supposed to be released, but it's just so hot off the press. So it's a bit premature. So basically, as soon as we get into that state of production and go back to our partners like the BFI, and just get to that next stage, which we're really excited about doing. We're a bit too hot off the press with it because we were so excited.
Understand. Well, I guess then you'll just have to give us the general scoop of what it is and what we should expect when it does come out, so we can all learn what you did, what you made.
Yeah. So Consensus Gentium is a film that watches you back using artificial intelligence and facial recognition. So it's a branching narrative set on your mobile device, set in the near future world of bias AI and surveillance. So you basically download a film that acts as if it's on your mobile device and uses the interface as the mobile as part of the narrative. And your objective is to visit your sick nana, the heartstrings of the sick nana. And to do that, you are kind of tested by the government and given certain objectives to achieve. And you have to download the governmental app, which involves things like auto self-surveillance. So which are things I've come up with as a futurist. So you're giving away your data and your digital civil liberties in return for more freedoms.
That actually is the way it works in China, is it not?
It is like, in a nutshell, similar, very, very similar in terms of the social credit system, which is very much an aspect of inspiration for this, in terms of the more compliant a citizen you are, the more
access you get.
The more access, but not just digital, like you'll be able to be eligible for more higher profile jobs or more higher wage jobs. And you can also, as well with mobility, be able to travel to certain instances. Even in China, if your dog was to defecate somewhere, you didn't clean it up and the camera picked it up, then that would affect your social credit status.
Whenever I hear storylines to this, there's a part of my brain that triggers from the movie Brazil. Did you all see the movie Brazil?
Yes.
That's
Which
like
part?
Over and over. Just the whole concept of how Terry Gilliam was such a genius and so far ahead of the curve of what is actually becoming real now. So for anyone that's listening who has never watched the movie,
This reminded me of the Black Mirror episode where, there's social credits and you rate every interaction that you have.
Right.
And that creates your social rating, which again gives you access to, it measures your influence.
Yes. I'd like to say thanks for both those kind of comparisons, because Brazil, I'm a filmmaker. And when you said Brazil, I'm just thinking of that shot of the lady and the big eye, and she's looking at them. And I bring that kind of sense of cinematography to my work. And I feel in the immersive space, as a filmmaker, I've coming at it from a different direction. I'm coming from a different kind of visual spectrum, and also character development and everything. And then Black Mirror as well. People often compare me to Black Mirror. I haven't seen a lot of Black Mirrors, but
there's just that one episode. I'll send you a little blurb.
Yeah, do. But that's a brilliant comparison in terms of social satire. On the money.
But the piece you did had no satire in it. I mean, it was a very serious, dramatic piece. And it certainly made me feel like it was a bit of a cliffhanger, since I wanted to know whether what happened to the character, right? That I had kind of inhabited. So is it going to be a longer piece when you finish it? Is it going to be episodic? Are you going to make a different one using this new storytelling technique?
So at the end, there's 3 potential endings, depending on if you're dissident, compliant, or somewhere in the middle, which I feel most people are. So I'm not sure what ending you got, Charlie, if you're dissident or more so compliant in this case.
I think I probably said I was a dissident, since I can't imagine saying I was the only.
But what happened is that this part 1 of Consensus Gentium, I'm sure you're dissident as well, Charlie, is Consensus Gentium is Latin for if everyone believes it must be true. So it's kind of comment on perception of society we're living in now. So the part 1 is actually a complete experience. And part 1 is looking at the problem, and part 2 is looking at the solution. So that's going on. So this is complete, this one. So part 1 was looking at how we need to kind of democratize AI, and the consequences of bias in AI, and potentially look at governance and policy and transparency for AI. Where part 2 is kind of like, okay, we're not really asking you to do these things. We're going to more take control, and is more about decolonization of AI and what that might look like through a storytelling experience.
Karen, question for you.
Please.
When you think about what you built and what you're building, there's stories and films, and there's games. Where do you think you sit inside that continuum? I'm very fascinated by it. Try to blur that line, and I think they are sort of separate mindsets, but I'm just wondering, where is your brain on that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I'm kind of everywhere a little bit, because the basis of it is film, so it's story and film, but it has this kind of gaming interface. I think it was Fast Company described it as your brain is the joystick when it comes to my work. So it's kind of your your brain is the interface, and it's imperceptible technology. It's high level tech, but you'd have to put a VR headset on or anything. It's just your brain is connecting. So I think I'm in between that. I'm at the intersection of all those and more in terms of art, tech, science, and other forms as well.
I think what's super cool about what you're doing is I think you're pushing a phone to do things way beyond what it was intended. And hopefully one day you'll stumble into the next level things that will really light up this kind of storytelling. Because you're sort of bursting out of the seams of a phone, needing immersiveness and sensing and AI and networks, and that's going to be super. You need filmmakers like what you are to break out of either the game mold or the TV or film mold, right? And there's this new place. I don't know if you have a good word for it yet, but it's really cool to see.
Actually, the word I was using a few years ago was neurogaming.
Say that again.
Neurogaming. Yeah, neurogaming.
Very William Gibson.
That's how a few people have described my work. And before COVID, actually, particularly before this project, I was using EEG sensors where people would put it on their head, and it would branch the narrative, and that's how they were describing my work. So I kind of listened to how people describe it, how they're interpreting it. But yeah, I'm really excited to explore where this goes as well in terms of next steps, in terms of really bursting at the scene, because this is like a test in a way that I thought could really rock it, and it has done so. So I'm right, okay, now we've got a feel of it, like what would be next.
What is your background that led you to this type of creationism on a teeny little device with a teeny little screen? I'm curious. I'm always curious if artists feel frustrated by the lack of real estate or inspired by the lack of real estate.
No, 100%. So my background is that I started out as a filmmaker, and I used to direct music videos, TV commercials, and documentaries ages ago. And then I was like, you know what? I feel the future is going to be technology. Let me just close this door because these beautiful wind chimes are going. 1 second.
We couldn't hear that at all. That's okay.
I didn't hear it either.
So I guess I closed the door. There was this lovely wind chimes going. That I used to direct music videos, TV commercials, and documentaries. And then about 15 years ago, I said, I feel the future is going to be technology and film, or technology and something, because I feel that people want to have this stimulant. There's always going to be a place for passive, like observer-based film or other forms of media, but I really felt that people want to engage more, and technology through that. And then I made a couple of films where there were live site installations and AI from 2016 and 2019. And then I was like, it's really cool making these kind of award-winning pieces that sit in gallery spaces and museums. But however, I really need to get to the masses, and this message needs to get to the masses. So it's kind of like, it's purpose-driven, because I have a message first, and then the most appropriate way to reach masses with this story about AI is through AI and directly to them. So it kind of chose itself. It wasn't really up to me, because that was my objective.
So do you have a website where people can check out your work or some of the work you've done? Is there going to be a website where people can sign up to get updates about this, so that when it goes public, they can learn about it, all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah. So, wow, thank you for that really lovely plug.
I'm always prompting to make sure we get, people to know.
So thank you. I have my web, with the website for the project is consensusgentium.ai, which is consensusgentium.ai. And on there should be an option to
I'll make sure that
we'll put it in
there's a link in the column.
Yeah, you can connect. And then there's karenpalmer.uk, which is my personal website about me, the artist, and I'm a futurist as well. And I'm a futurist through a Black lens. So my perspective is very much focused on the future of working class people who are probably women or Black or minorities, and their future, which isn't really normally represented when people tend to do futurism, because I think they're going to have a slightly different future.
I noticed it. I did take a quick look at the site, Karen, and I noticed that you do a lot of public speaking.
Yes.
And this is so interesting. We could take this conversation in a couple of directions. We don't have a lot of time. I am very interested in talking to you further about the possibility. You should talk to Ted, because I think he knows people at movie studios. But
I know somebody. I know
you think of the possibilities of this with movie stars and being tied to larger media events, and it's just, I think you're inventing a new language and a new way for for artists to reach an audience of incalculable size. We've never, this is sort of the internet in your hand, but it also sort of melts into this device, which is like making us into cyborgs.
Yes, no, 100%. I mean, like Netflix did Bandersnatch, and it was like this, in terms of it was like narrative where you clicked a button, and mine is using your facial detection and eye gaze. I mean, I'm really proud as like a Black woman who's an independent artist working with the BFI and National Lottery in the UK as an independent, and my amazing team, Unless Pictures, in Australia and Immersive Studios in Chicago, that we were able to create this new interface. So we're kind of open to the next steps. As an independent artist, you have to be, but we have a vision to continue to be independent and continue to trailblaze and continue to develop our partnerships with people as well.
So, well, congratulations again on winning the jury prize for XR Experience at South by Southwest.
Thank you, thank you.
I think anybody listening to this is going to be dying to look at this thing on their phone. So hopefully it won't be too long.
Yes, hopefully it won't be too long.
But hopefully we'll be able to follow up with you
yes, definitely.
and learn
Absolutely.
more about what you've got
Absolutely.
going on and see if there's, at least in my part, some way to help tell this story and keep it going.
Thank you so much, Charlie and Ted and Ronnie. Much appreciated.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. All right. Cameron Kostopoulos of Los Angeles is joining us.
Interesting. I was looking at her website as you guys were talking, and she's very, she's
right.
a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
She's an interesting woman.
I know
Yeah.
she is an interesting person. Wow.
And it gives me pause about how the UK in all of its forms supports artist dynamics much stronger than we do in the West, in the US. Everything has to be commercially viable in the US, and the UK understands artistry through a different lens.
Well, speaking of a different lens, we have Cameron has joined us. Cameron, welcome to This Week in XR. I think I forced you to listen to, or I'm sorry, I assigned you to listen to this podcast back in the fall when we were doing our XR history and context class. So Cameron is a graduate student at Arizona State University, a recent graduate of USC, and he is I guess, VR filmmaker, and won a special jury prize for his film for his experience Body of Mine. I will let him describe it, but I will only say that my fellow juror, Jessica Brillhart, was in tears. And she laid down and said, if this is not the best experience, it needs a special recognition award, because finally someone had done the real empathy machine that Bailenson and Nani De La Pena and others have been talking about for, I don't know, 20 years, this ability to put you in someone else's shoes. So I think Cameron has executed that idea and more, because there's a lot more to this. So Cameron, welcome, and tell us and everybody. And again, Ronnie and Ted did not have a chance to do the experience. So share with us the experience, and I'm so excited that you got this honor and got recognized for your work, sort of like right out of the gate, man. That is so impressive. So anyway,
this is the super FOMO episode of This Week in XR.
Yeah, because it's really going to be hard for the public to see this.
Right.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you for inviting me. It's super cool to be a part of the podcast after listening to it in your class. And for everyone else, it's super great to meet you guys. I'm Cameron. I was one of Charlie's students. I'm a filmmaker of live action work and VR work and other multimedia stuff. So this has been my first VR experience. So seeing like it just kind of take off has been super, super, super cool. I literally a year ago, I didn't know how to make VR content, and a year later, taking home a special jury prize from South by Southwest. So it's been a really cool year and a really cool journey. But if you're not familiar with the piece, Body of Mine, it's a full body experience that puts you inside the body of another gender, and you can interact with your skin to discover stories, thoughts, emotions, interviews with trans people. So it's kind of a gender dysphoria exploration through VR, and kind of an experiment in how do you create intimacy and empathy through technology. How can you create an experience where you forget for a moment that you have all these trackers strapped to you and this bulky headset and a cable coming out of the back? How can you forget that for a moment so you connect on a really visceral experience to transgender stories?
I thought that was very effective. Let me do my journalist thing for just a second and try and describe this in a slightly different way. So you enter this themed environment, which is all like, blood red and, seems like you're inside of a body. And, they as Cameron said, he has them put body trackers on you and a VR headset. I think, was that a Vive? I can't even remember.
We were using a Vive Pro Eye for eye tracking with
So
Vive
you put on
trackers.
the Vive Pro and you're kind of, you spawn into this environment like inside the body. So you sort of see ribs and parts of organs, or at least, impressionistic, kind of, right? I felt like I was in a womb, right? That's
Yeah. The experience takes place inside a rib cage. We wanted to create a genderless experience. We all have heart and lungs and rib cages, but also something that was dysphoric and had the metaphor being trapped inside your own skin.
so that's the quote unquote VR room that you're in. And within that room, there is a mirror. And that's where the body tracking comes in, because, the avatar in the mirror tracks perfectly to your physical body. But, if you're a man, now you're in a woman's body. And the narration is about the experience of being in the wrong body. So it really, is filled with these super interesting, so pre-association in a way that is very personal and very surprising. I think other people were super emotionally affected by it. Were there others in addition to Jessica who were just so visibly shaken to finally do the thing that we've all been talking about for so long?
Yeah, we had a lot of tears, a lot of people coming back to me, and a lot of big hugs and crying. A couple of people couldn't talk right away. They had to go and take a couple laps around the ballroom and then circle back to us and let us know their thoughts. It was really cool to see even cisgender people, how strong emotional reaction they had, because even though our experience is combining this tech with trans interviews and it's a trans story, there's also very universal qualities to it. It's about how we relate to our bodies, how we exist in our own skin, the way we perceive ourselves in a mirror, and that's something that everyone can relate to. So lots of tears.
Yeah, it made me feel like the gender dysphoria part, like that people exist on a spectrum. It isn't black or white, or you're this or you're that, it's everybody as an individual. So I thought that message was important and kind of transcended even the LGBTQ themes in it.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you. And that's why the piece was so perfect for VR, because we wanted to be a human experience, and we wanted to talk about humans, not in terms of gender or with categories or putting people in boxes. We wanted to just look at all these bodies, look at our bodies, and look at everyone as just human beings.
So let me ask you this question as I'm listening to you and Charlie talk, because it's interesting as someone who has not seen the work, but curious and have seen things that explore these themes. They tend to find themselves, and this may be a little bit of a controversial vein, but it's interesting to talk about it. These pieces tend to find themselves where audiences are already pre-tuned up for this type of thing. A film festival has an audience typically that is much more open and much more caring about different forms of humanity and different choices. How do you feel, and do you think it is impossible to bring this to audiences that don't have that openness, that are much stronger biased and much sort of closed-minded to the way that they were raised or their environments are? And do you think, based on the fact that it's new media and it's VR, you would have success actually trying to change hearts and minds of people whose hearts and minds need to be changed? Because in a film festival, I think you've already got them. If you take it to a place outside of a film festival, it would be interesting to see what the reaction you get is. And would you get a reaction of people that just reject it and don't understand it and feel like they're being threatened by it? I'm very curious if you have perspective.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's such a good question. And you're totally right. For the moment, we are kind of limited to film festival circuits and art galleries and places where we can physically put our equipment, because the tech we're using it's not as easy to distribute as just putting it on a Quest 2, So the things you're talking about are things that we're always thinking about, and it's definitely one of our long-term goals is how can we make it as accessible and easy to put on the head to get into as possible, so that we can reach those people. Me, myself, I was raised in Texas, so coming here has been like a return home. And I was raised in a homophobic household and in a very homophobic environment. So in all of my work, VR and live action and everything else, I'm always thinking about that. I'm thinking you know, how could I create an experience that would change my dad's mind? And, you know, I think that's always something that's on my mind. It's always
So
something
have you
that I'm
had a
thinking
chance
about.
to show it to your dad? Has he seen it?
I don't have a relationship with
Oh,
either of my
interesting.
parents anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, so maybe one day,
That's,
maybe one day
let me
we'll
just
connect.
say this, Cameron. That's really a shame because they're missing the opportunity to be proud of you.
Yeah.
You know, so I have to say,
Well, maybe they'll listen to
I'm
this,
proud of
Charlie,
you.
and-
Everybody at ASU is really proud of you. So I think that they, you know, I know it's really hurtful to you. It's very present to you. You talk about this a lot, but I just want to say that they're the ones who are missing out, and it's really a shame. But hopefully the incredible response that you've gotten has given you just a little something that you couldn't get anywhere else. So.
And by the way, Cameron, sometimes like maybe this podcast, as crazy as it might sound, send this to them, you know, because they can just click on it and listen to it on YouTube or on an Apple, you know, podcast. What I've noticed about people, especially with family situation, this is kind of interesting. It's turned into a little bit of therapy section.
I know, but he's, you know, he's got such a baby face. It's hard to resist.
But it's interesting because I've seen this many times, man. I've, you know, between Charlie and Rody and I, we've been around the block quite a lot longer than you have. The idea of changing hearts and minds is not a one-step process. It tends to be slowly chipping away and finding an entry point where they feel comfortable, they don't feel threatened, they feel like they can learn something safely. So maybe, you know, if you're looking, and you may not be looking to rekindle that relationship, but if you are, perhaps this plus may achieve that objective. And then you can come back on the podcast a year from now or a day from now or a month from now and say, guess what?
But
You know,
did people you knew that you grew up with in Austin see it?
Yeah, some of my childhood friends have seen it. It was super cool to put them in a headset because those are people who are totally removed from film and VR and television. Some of them had never done VR in general, much less a full body thing. So seeing those reactions was super cool too. Yeah, the whole gamut of people had just a range of reactions.
So Cameron, a friend of mine is the guy Alex Poots. He runs the Shed in New York. I don't know if you know the Shed, but like that's I just sent him the link as we're talking, because you know that's like the kind of venue. I don't know if he'll do it or not, but like that's the kind of place that if you keep touring this thing, would get a really big audience. And you know, there's other places like that around the U.S. and around the world. And I think what's really interesting, like because I built a lot of XR tech, is that it does reshape people's sense of reality, and that jarring nature of like, I think I know what reality is, and then you spend some time in it, and it knocks over these fixed things which are not true. And what's interesting is you're blending like wanting to change a mindset with a tech which actually jars the mind out of its like preconceived notions of reality. So it's really interesting to see the story and the tech coming together for maybe its real intended purpose. Because people do have this like wrong sense of reality, right? And like it's usually only been like physicists who study quantum mechanics or philosophers sitting on mountaintops who sort of like contemplate these things. But then this like level jumps you to be like, no, it's just not that. You know, you don't have to be a Tibetan monk meditating for 20 years. So it's interesting how you're like throwing people into this state that causes them to question a bunch of fixed beliefs, which are probably not true. Many things about like reality that people believe are not true, and then the truth is probably scary to them. But it's interesting how you're jarring that, and maybe it's a really interesting tool to reshape mindset. It'd be really kind of crazy to see like you tour a bunch of red states with this, probably in an armored truck, surrounded by a bunch of Navy SEALs.
Well, that was kind of what the point I was getting to is, you know, can you make it to the Gucci red part?
I mean, again, you know, this kind of location-based art piece is very specific. So it's the biggest problem is a lot of people can't experience it because you can only go in one at a time. And I also think just so interesting that, you know, you made this sort of empathy piece and you couldn't have found a better mentor than Nani De La Pena. So, you know, that was sort of one of the happy accidents of this graduate program sort of popping up in downtown LA with very little notice. And somehow Cameron and ASU and Nani found each other. So it was very fortunate for the art world and the people at South by Southwest that you found it and that you made it. I can't wait to see what you do next. and hopefully I'll see you downtown soon. So
Hey, Charlie,
Cameron,
can we do
thanks
one
for-
more shout out? One more shout out before we.
Oh wait, yeah, bodyofmindvr.com is the website.
And in case anyone's listening at the White House, you should invite Cameron to show this to Congress and show this to the White House. That's a way to change
Yeah,
everything.
certain people in Congress.
If you guys are listening at the White House, invite them over.
And Cameron, I will make the same offer that I made to my friend Victoria, who I don't know if you saw her piece, Charlie, I know saw it, about the Cambodian refugees, an incredibly emotional, jarring piece. So, you know, I have the studio in Los Angeles at Paramount. I have a place in Malibu and a place downtown that can be venues to show this to more people. So, and Charlie knows, you know, we can stay connected. So,
yeah, there's also Tim Disney's gallery in Silver Lake. If you want.
So if you need more places to show it off, that won't cost you anything, and people will be supportive of it, we will
I
absolutely.
think ASU would like him to use ASU, but maybe, maybe, I mean, we should do a party for it at the Hex downtown. I got to tell Nani about that. All right, Cameron, have a great restful weekend. You must be exhausted.
Exhausted, yeah, and accomplished.
You left it on the field.
Yes, we did.
Thank you.
We did what we came here to do. So thank you guys so much. It's been
Congrats.
awesome talking with you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, this is kind of fun speed dating.
Nice show, Charlie. Good job.
Kind of fun speed dating. He's a great guy.
That's great. I mean, it's nice when a student, you know, becomes motivated and starts to. It's a rarity, right? When someone.
Yeah, he came, but they come to you that way.
And let's
Right,
get
they
the
come-
White House, guys. Let's tweet to the White House.
Yeah, love it.
All right, we're getting Roman live from the continent.
Wow, this
Talk
is a
about somebody who must be exhausted.
It's like around
The
the world,
whole,
180 minutes with Charlie, or 180
whole
seconds.
extended episode today.
I know.
This
You
is
know
the
what we should
director's
do, Ted?
cut.
After I don't know what your schedule is today, but maybe we should do a whole like half hour on South by and what
Just
we
the overall South by. Yeah, I still have to tell you my South by story. So.
I know. So maybe we should just record that when we do it.
Hey, Charlie, how's it going?
Roman, welcome to This Week in XR. Thank you for calling in and staying awake. You must be ready to
It's
fall.
all right. It's been an intense week, but thank you for having me.
So this year seems to be an upgraded version of last year's experience, right? It was still a short, I think 2-song or 3-song set.
Mm-hmm.
And there was still a relatively small audience, I think even smaller than we had last year. But the experience was obviously much better crafted and much more professional. And, you know, so as I described before you came on, that, you know, the concert is a mixed reality concert. Sometimes you're in VR, sometimes you're in mixed reality, sometimes you're just using the pass-through cameras, and at times you're actually confused about where exactly in reality you are. And at the same time, through your company wristband, it's also being simulcast into the metaverse.
Yeah, that's right. I think one of the things about combining music with new tech and software is that advantage of it is always getting better. Technology is always improving, so there's always new things you can do. But then there's the kind of push and pull side of it, which is just when you get a brand new headset and you can do 10 times as many things with it, then the headset that's been released, there are very few of them in the world, so you have to have less people. So you have this kind of expansion and contraction of what's possible and what's happening in the actual space. But it's also sometimes difficult for people to understand that it's taking place in those three realms of reality. Some people just come along to it and are seeing a band playing on a stage. Some people are coming along to the physical space and are seeing a band playing on a stage, but then are being transported to a virtual world. And then some people are on a laptop in Oslo wandering around as an avatar and are sort of unaware of these other layers. So
I mean, once again, Charlie, we'll probably have to level set a little bit about what Roman is talking about here to get a sense of what this visual experience was at South by.
Did you see it, Ted?
Of course not. I saw literally a whole different version of stuff.
You missed me. Okay, so Roman is a composer and a musician and leads a wonderful, what I would call trip hop band called Miro. They're based in Europe. He toured all over the world. His music is on Spotify and iTunes. Highly recommended. I was delighted to discover it. But he was introduced to me by Ann McKinnon, who is an XR blogger and writer and advisor to a number of companies. And she and that's how she started with Miro as an advisor. And I guess she and you and Anne started to think about, how do you scale this thing? How do you offer it to other musicians? How do you grow it as a platform that people would be aware of, as a another way to consume and interface with music and musicians. So so they created Wristband. So the show in Austin was put on by Miro, and Wristband, I guess, sort of produced the show.
That's right.
Both the VR local part as well as the metaverse part.
Yeah.
And so that was the experience. You stand in a line, they take 8 people at a time, they put you in chairs in front of a stage. Roman and I think one other musician and a bunch of really cool electronics, play live. A couple of they were vocal pieces, as I recall.
Yeah, there's
too
a
focused
track
on the words, but
yeah, it was a track sort of interspersed with more cinematic and spoken word bits. But Ted, I can quickly explain what the user experiences as well, because we often have, we try and explain this to booking agents who are booking a festival and have had the traditional thing of how we consume a live show for 50 years, and trying to explain it to them is actually a lot easier than spending time with Charlie, who gets it. But basically, you're walking into a venue, you're seated in this venue, as Charlie said. The headsets that you're put on are all connected up on a multiplayer network. And what that means is we're allowed to create a show that runs virtually. So everything you can do with a game engine, flying over a lake, exploring a destroyed city, levels of interaction and interactivity. But from the stage, I'm able to control manually what is happening to the audience and where they are. And crucially, the onboard cameras